Okay, since we're at the top of the hour, I'll begin. Thanks all for joining us for our March community conversation, operationalizing accessibility best practice and ADA Title II. My name is Yang Wu, and I'm the Open Resources Librarian at Clemson University in South Carolina and a member of the OEN Event Planning Committee. We are excited to dive into this topic with you today. And to begin, we want to see where you are at the topic, and to hear from you first. If you can please comment on your knowledge of the topic in this poll in Mentimeter, which Bethany is going to drop into the prompt, and she has already done this. Um, and we will kind of circle back to hear your results very soon. But while we wait for your answers to trickle in, we have a few ground rules outlined here to ensure that this conversation is a welcome place for discussion. We'd also like to note that the beginning of today's session will be recorded, and we will end the recording before our group discussion ends. There's also automatic captioning enabled, which you can access by using, show captions button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, has everyone had the opportunity to fill out the poll? It seems like many of us have some experience with applying accessibility to your OER work, although we don't have anyone that feels very comfortable. And we're going to discuss more in the discussion itself. So I'll turn this back to you, Lorraine. So, and thank you all for sharing your input. Before we hand things over to today's contributors, I want to share our agenda for today's session. So we've just had our welcome and introduction from 12:05 to 12:20 Central Time. We're going to have the panel with Mark and Colleen, which I'll let them introduce themselves later on. From 12:20 to 12:25, we're going to have breakout rooms, a small discussion, or small group discussion divided by subject of interest, and we have three subjects of interest. From 12:35 to 12:50, we're going to have a community debrief. And from 12:50 to 12:55, we're going to have closing remarks. So I'll let the speakers please introduce yourselves and begin your presentation.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Anthony Lane, and I've been part of the OER unit at Oregon State University for the past 5 years. And our unit partners with faculty to help them adopt, adapt, and author OER. And I personally work most closely with faculty authors to manage their project. So my initial lens this morning, or this afternoon for some folks, will be on the authoring workflow, but the practices are transferable to adoption and adaptation. And if we could move to the next slide. Okay, so we are working to promote accessibility as a core value, not just as a compliance checkbox, but as part of fostering inclusive excellence. And I'll be honest, it's more of an aspiration at the moment rather than a fully realized mission, but it's something we're working toward. And one of the realities that we're facing right now is that we don't anticipate any additional institutional resources dedicated to ensuring Title II compliance. So like many of you, we will be leaning on our campus partners and colleagues to try to support each other. And lately, we've been asking ourselves two key questions. Are our current practices good enough to meet Title II compliance moving forward? And is our remediation process sufficient to bring our back catalog up to standard? And on the next slide, we'll see how we embed accessibility into our workflow. So when we start a project with faculty, we immediately integrate accessibility. As of last week, that compliance is now part of our MOU process. And when discussing image sourcing and licensing, we also cover alt text, image contrast, and the use of color. And when faculty is sharing how they envision structuring their work, we introduce principles like descriptive headings, proper heading hierarchy, and consistency across chapters. And when we collaborate on the style sheet, accessibility is now part of that process. So we align elements like headings, web links, and image contrast with the WCAG standards. And Title II has been helpful in giving us a clear framework and rationale for these conversations now that the standards are explicitly codified into the federal regulations. Early in the writing process, we'll receive a sample chapter from the author, which we build in Pressbooks, and that's when we begin accessibility testing. First, we will run WAVE, the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, and we run that to flag broad accessibility issues. And then we use the Axe Dev Tools browser extension for a more streamlined audit, specifically for WCAG 2.1 AA. And then we'll discuss with the author if there are any issues that they need to address while they're writing the rest of the manuscript. And we'll repeat that process with another chapter around the halfway mark. And then we'll also do it for all chapters when the publication is ready to go live. And as part of that pre-publication control, we also use the NVDA screen reader to check for flow and usability on a select number of chapters. And on the next slide, we'll look at the legacy OER that we've already published. So I think, like many of you, we have a back catalog of OER that were created before accessibility was integrated into our workflows. And I think it's somewhat similar to what faculty may encounter when they're adopting or adapting materials. So we identified about 50 legacy titles, and then using the criteria prescribed by the federal regulations, we identified 20 of them that will be archived, leaving 30 to evaluate and remediate. And our process to do that is similar to what we do with the new projects, but with an added layer of accountability. Every title is reviewed by 2 people to ensure consistency and thoroughness. And we first evaluate all of the titles to find the most frequent issue types so we can develop standardized remediation processes for those. And we've just completed the evaluation phase where we catalog the most common issue types. And unsurprisingly, alt text and heading structure were at the top of that list. Together, they accounted for almost 50% of the issues that we found. And then text contrast issues, web links, and tables for another 30%. And if you're already practicing remediation, this likely sounds very familiar. And for anyone just starting, these areas could be useful focus points as you build experience. And on the final slide, we'll take a step back and look at some of the broader challenges of Title II compliance. So to wrap up, I wanted to address some of the gray areas that we encounter. Neither tool I've suggested is perfect. Tools like Wave and AxeDev, they flag potential issues, but they don't understand context. So they may flag redundant web links. That's when 2 links pointing to the same content are in succession, but they won't know if those links make sense in context. So the links may be successive, but they may also be separated by 5,000 words, be in different sections and used in different contexts. So how do we evaluate those? Do we leave them as are? Do we obscure one from assistive technologies? The The tools will flag embedded YouTube videos, but they won't assess if the videos have captions or if any captions are accurate. I found that Wave in particular likes to suggest an abundance of possible header issues in Pressbooks when there really aren't any. So accessibility testing for now does, as you know, require a hands-on manual evaluation. And I think that also raises larger questions about how far we go. Do we provide alternate tables specifically for screen readers when they'd be more appropriate, even if the original tables are already technically compliant? Do we use ARIA attributes to enrich the reading experience of folks using assistive technologies? Do we ask for no images of text from authors? Do we ask for transcripts of images of text regardless of context? If we think there's a color contrast issue in an image, are we distinguishing between standard content and WCAG exceptions like heat maps and photographs? Do we know if we can remediate an issue with a conforming alternate version, for example, providing a transcript alongside an image of a handwritten document? And what are our best practices outside of meeting compliance? And in the final slide, I think those questions, they highlight the complexity of achieving inclusive excellence with accessibility. But for now, I think we're doing our best to balance compliance, the available resources we have, and transparency. And ultimately, we're just striving for a good faith, best effort approach. And I hope that together that's going to be good enough. And I appreciate your time. I look forward to learning how all of you folks are navigating these same challenges in the upcoming conversations after the next panelist, Colleen Deel.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I am Colleen Deel. I am the Open Educational Resources Librarian at Northern Kentucky University. To set the scene, Northern Kentucky University is a regional comprehensive institution, state institution within Kentucky, right on the Ohio border. We are, I think, around 13,000 students from undergrad and graduate students. I am the OER librarian starting about 2.5 to 3 years ago is when I took over that role. I actually am the first person to be the OER librarian at NKU. So that kind of speaks to where we are in the general process as an institution, thinking about open resources, and then of course, thinking about how we make those open resources accessible to everyone. So yeah, we can go on to the next slide. So I kind of formatted my presentation as how I started thinking about this, where I am now, and where I hope to be in the future. So starting with how it started, I am a member of my university's Accessibility Steering Committee. This is a committee that is made up of a number of folks across the institution, including communications and marketing, IT, our accessibility office, and instructional designers, as well as librarians. There's a couple of us as well. And I learned about these changes that were coming from this group. And at this point, and kind of at the beginning, and still, we're at the point of just feeling worried. We are not sure, similar to what Mark was saying, we are not sure what it looks like to do this work at scale, since we also don't foresee changes in our staffing levels related to being able to meet these standards. Our primary worry right now, in addition to remediation, is audio descriptions on videos. I don't know if others have heard about these audio descriptions and how potentially they're going to be required with all videos that are uploaded on state websites. I'll throw in a link in the chat there related to audio descriptions and what that means. But essentially, it is being able to provide synchronized description of the visuals that you're seeing in a video. So we're thinking through, like, what does that look like for all of the videos that we're putting out at any one time, both with OER and more broadly across campus. In addition to this steering committee conversations that, again, are just really conversations at this point, I've also been talking with folks across the state of Kentucky about what they're doing, and it seems like many of us are in the same spot. So I personally, when I answered the Menti question this morning, or this afternoon, I also said I was somewhat comfortable. So we are, many of us are in the same place where we kind of know what we're doing, but we're still a little bit trying to figure things out. So on the next slide, I will talk a little bit about where I am now and how I'm managing accessibility within my current scope of work. One of my main roles within my job description is managing a faculty stipend program. In general, the stipends are going towards faculty who are choosing to adopt or adapt open resources rather than create at this point. We have had this stipend program for 3 years, so not very many. In total, I think we've done work on 37 classes, so many of those were adoptions where folks have adopted resources for their class. A few of them have been adaptations. So for my grant itself, when I think about accessibility, there's not much remediation that needs to be done because in general, we are not at the point where we're creating very much content, or rather we're adopting and adapting some content. But where I am now is within this grant, I do, very similar to what Mark said, in my MOU that I require everyone to sign before they receive funding. They do have to recognize that there is an accessibility requirement with any of the work they do. That requirement is currently anything that somebody creates. So typically within an adaptation, in my case, the materials that they create must meet accessibility standards. We do not require, although I really push that the adoptions, so materials that are being adopted by faculty, also meet accessibility standards, but we are not at this point requiring that piece, although that could change in the future. I also provide some asynchronous support when I work with the faculty who receive these stipends, and I will throw a link into the chat, and that's the link that's there on the site, on the page there. This is the asynchronous support that I provide via, we use Canvas, so this is a link to a Canvas Commons page related to accessibility. So I encourage faculty who go through the stipend process to review this documentation, and when they're looking at potential materials that they want to adopt, or when they're looking at the materials that they're currently adapting. This support really is just an educational wing of the grant or the stipend that I provide. I also want to really focus on the recognition that as a librarian, I have certain skills, but I don't have others. So it's typically at the point where I work with faculty related to inserting their materials into their actual course that I start connecting them with our instructional designers on campus. Our instructional designers, and potentially in your case as well, are much more knowledgeable when it comes to accessibility than I am. So they are really stepping in at a certain point and supporting faculty throughout that process. So I want to encourage folks to definitely connect with those other people within your institutions to support the work that you're doing related to accessibility. And then finally, before I actually distribute any funding to anyone, I do require everyone's work to go through an accessibility checklist. And again, this is specifically for materials that are being created by the faculty locally. So I will also throw this link into the chat. This is the resource that kind of mimics that educational piece that I linked to just a moment ago. But what this material does is allow me to go through and check off whether or not each accessibility standard is being met. So on the next slide, I will talk a little bit about where I'm going next. So of course, all of the accessibility standards that we're currently requiring do not meet the Title II requirements. So this all needs to be updated, right? So that is something that I'm going to be working on over the next year, updating those materials. And then the final thing that I'm thinking through, and perhaps some of you are thinking about this as well, is what it looks like to put money where our values are. So we are interested in developing new stipends that are specific to accessibility of OER. So if you've already, for example, adopted an OER and received stipend funding for that adoption or even that adaptation, I'm interested in giving more funding to faculty who are interested in making those materials accessible. So that'll be a next step for me. Hopefully you're kind of thinking along the same ways, and hopefully this gave you some ideas as well, but I look forward to learning about what you are all doing next. So thank you.
And thank you so much to our speakers for sharing their experience with the group.